Alright, what's going on, guys? So over the past few days we've gotten way too many Elden Ring details. We covered them all very briefly here on the channel, and while the vast majority of it sounds amazing, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't very concerned about a few things. And it's one thing in particular that I think might destroy a very core part of this game. So today we're going to break that down, and I want to offer my own constructive criticism, because they did say this is still in development. But as always, before we get started, guys, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. I do my best to keep you up to date with all the latest Elden Ring news, and pretty much anything related to Dark Souls and FromSoftware. Now, the thing I wanted to talk about today are the new details regarding PvP, and how they said it's going to work in Elden Ring. Now, we know invasions are coming back, and we know that we're going to have our traditional red sign soapstone, so we're still going to have the option for 1v1s. But there's one thing in particular that I think desperately needs to be changed before the game comes out, and that is that invasions are going to be limited to co-op only. Now let me break that down for a little bit. What that means is that when you go to invade somebody, you're only going to be able to invade people that already have Phantom summoned. Now, if you're a veteran Dark Souls player and you've done PvP for a while, and you know how it works, then you should be able to see the problem with this right off the bat. What that means is that when you invade somebody, it's never going to be a fair fight. You are automatically starting out at a disadvantage. Now, I get the point that an invasion is not supposed to be a fair fight. You're going into somebody else's game, while they already have all the enemies of the world trying to attack them, and your goal is to become another obstacle on top of all of that, and bring down the host. Now, on paper, it sounds like we have no reason to complain as invaders with this new change, because theoretically the odds are already stacked against the host, and the goal of this would just be to level the playing field. Except it never actually works out that way. When you play Dark Souls in co-op, the game becomes exponentially easier. So easy that there's almost nothing in the game besides bosses that can stand in your way. Now, that's not me trying to be an elitist, that's just the way it works. With the way enemies get staggered, if you have two people attacking the same enemy, it physically can't fight back. And the same thing applies to an invader. When you have a 2v1 situation, there's almost nothing the invader can do to fight back. If you're getting attacked from multiple sides, you're going to be staggered every chance you get, and you have physically no ability to swing back. Now, obviously, you can use your wits and try to manage the enemies in the game to separate the Phantom and the host, but if the people you're invading have an IQ above room temperature, they're not going to separate, and they're going to win 9 times out of 10. Now, the point of this isn't just to whine and complain. I'm well aware that the situation of an invasion is never just going to be a plain one-on-one fight, and there's options for that still. We are still getting the red sign soapstone, which theoretically should allow for the one-on-one if we so desire. But as you guys know, if you play Dark Souls 3, it never works out like that. If you try to leave your red sign soapstone in this game, the majority of times you're going to get summoned to a world where people are co-opted up and farming invaders for souls. Now, I know that's not the intended use, but that's what it's evolved into. So pretty much the only avenue for a fair fight in this game is by invading a host that's playing by themselves. And if I'm talking from personal experience, most of the time when I invade a host, they're not in the middle of enemies. And if they are, they quickly assess their situation and separate themselves from adds. Now, I'm aware that the resources can be limited, but the invader already starts with limited resources to counteract this. So to me personally, the playing field is already leveled, and I know people will have differing opinions on this, but let me explain why I don't think this is going to work in Elden Ring. FromSoftware has made it very clear that co-op is a big point of interest for them in Elden Ring, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's strayed from its intended purpose, from people just wanting to play the game with their friends, and has become a primary means of farming, at least in Dark Souls 3. The majority of matchmaking that I find in Dark Souls 3 is hosts with multiple phantoms farming invaders for souls. Now, I don't think that should be taken away at all, that's not what I'm saying, but I think there needs to be a balance in the people that want to invade for fun and those that want to play with their friends. The invasion is such a core part of the game, and the goal of it is not just to go ruin somebody's day. These games have an addictive and fun PvP experience that almost no other games out there can match. The feeling of creating a build for a character that you made and you leveled up and you took the time to master is just as addicting as the feeling of beating a hard boss, and you want to use that to compete against others. And I think that's an aspect of the game that should be catered to just as much as co-op. So what are some solutions? If we can't rely on the red sign soapstone, and we know that the invasions in Elden Ring are never going to be a fair fight, then we're left with no options. There's going to have to be a new form of matchmaking, whether that's an arena or some new form of multiplayer matchmaking altogether that actually works, where the players that want to engage in PvP can can, where they're also separate from quote-unquote ruining the experience for others, and they can actually engage in the activity that they want to. And honestly, I'm really disappointed in FromSoftware that they see invasions as a negative. Invasions have been a core part of the Souls experience for as long as I can remember. To me personally, the experience of getting invaded should be just as regular as a boss. And honestly, you don't get invaded that much. Aside from NPCs, I can count on both hands the amount of times I actually got invaded by a real player throughout my first playthroughs of all the Souls games combined. Obviously, that's just my personal experience, but this idea that people are quitting the game because they're getting invaded so much, I don't think holds any water. But in the case that there are a lot of people who actually have their entire gaming experience ruined by an invader, maybe there can be some kind of toggle, like a covenant they can join that will prevent them from getting invaded. To me, that kind of sounds like an easy mode, but maybe that's an option. And then the rest of the players can have the experience like normal. But I really think solo players should be able to get invaded. And there's gotta be another matchmaking system for PvP. And let's think about this from a technical perspective too. I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to assume that the majority of players are gonna be playing solo. And I'd imagine that the majority of them don't mind being invaded. So just throwing out a blanket number, I'd say that's probably about 75% of the community that cannot matchmake. So I'm worried that if they continue with this idea, we're gonna have a huge excess of people trying to invade, and all only being able to matchmake with a few select people that are co-opted and fit the same level and item parameters that standard Dark Souls matchmaking requires. So we're gonna have hundreds of people waiting their turn to invade only 6 or 7 worlds. I just don't see any way that this works. I think unless they have a huge matchmaking overhaul, this idea of PvP in Elden Ring is doomed from the start. And it's a shame, you know, because we've been playing Dark Souls 3 PvP for 5 years now, and the PvP community around Dark Souls isn't some fringe minority. That's a huge chunk of their player base. So I really hope they change this before the game comes out. I think they have to change it or PvP is going to be awful in this game. The fact that it's 4-player online max is bad enough, but you know, that's just my opinion. What do you guys that actively play PvP think about these changes? And what are some ways FromSoftware could save this and make it work before the game comes out? You know, in times like these, it's important to remember that we have to provide constructive criticism. We can complain all we want, we can argue all we want, but we have to come at this from a point of understanding that development is an extremely tricky process. And with all these new experimental features coming to Elden Ring, they've really got their hands full in trying to make a PvP system that works. So hopefully we as a community can come together and present new changes for FromSoftware to find that balance between those of us that really want to play PvP in this game in a fun and fair way, and the others that are just trying to play casually with their friends. But anyways guys, that's going to pretty much do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll catch you in the next one.